Hello and welcome to the Shack News Chattycast, the podcast that has a burrito truck parked right outside the convention center. I'm one of your hosts, Steve Watts.
And I am your other host, Brian Carr. Steve, as always, the Chattycast brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/chattycast. That's audibletrial.com/chattycast. I did that without the copy. How did I do?
Good job, good job. That
All right.
professional radio experience paying off again.
Yeah.
So every week we pick a big topic, post about it in the Shack News Chatty, and then talk about it in detail, hence Chattycast. Today's guest, a man with more E3 experience than most websites' entire staff, Asif Khan.
Hello.
That is actually true. You've been going since what? Like, you worked for a Nintendo site?
I worked for tendobox.com, which is
the name escaped me, but that was how many years ago? Give us an idea.
2001.
Yeah. So
I think I've been to 13 or 14 E3s. There was a couple. We're going to talk about this later. There was a couple of E3s where they were no longer in the convention center and it severely contracted. I did not go to those. I think it was only
like when they were in the airplane hangar and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I did not go to those E3s. I wasn't employed by a website at that time because the games.
And also, you were like, "Fuck that noise."
Yeah. Well, I would have gone. I would have. I love E3. Contrary to what some shackers were posting in that thread, I think E3 is still. I think E3 is still very important.
Oh yeah, we will get to the negativity soon.
Porcosaurus.
So we're talking today. We're talking about E3. We're sort of talking about E3 for the next couple of shows leading up to the show, the big E3 show. But this week we're going to be talking specifically about the direction of E3. This year, there's been a lot of talk about the ways E3 is changing. They've made a lot of big changes from last year, even in the last few years. We've sort of seen certain trends taking root. So we're going to sort of like play prognosticators and talk about like where all this ends up. And the way I phrased the question to the chatty was, what does E3 look like in 5 years? You know, like a significant enough time away that large changes could take effect. So we're going to get to all of that. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about what we have been playing. And Asif, as our guest, what have you been occupying yourself with?
I haven't played a video game in like a week just because I was.
Get off the podcast.
I know. I mean, I'm sad to say. I mean, I was in Michigan for the last week. So what have I been playing lately? Techno. Yeah, we were throwing a party.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well,
yeah,
you can mention your good deeds if you.
Yeah,
if you'd rather talk about that.
we raised almost $4,000 for Michigan charities this weekend, and yeah, it was awesome. And we gave free water to all of our guests. It was a very talked about party. It was good. You know, I had a good time. Yeah. I performed. It was really fun. Yeah.
Do you have a DJ name or is it just Army of Techno?
I'm actually a producer of sorts. Oh. I'm not a DJ per se. I'm a live PA. I use machines to create beats live. But I go by Productive Citizen, and my logo is actually a man with a briefcase.
Gotcha.
So before I was on Shack News as the man with the briefcase, I already was at Army of Techno as the man with the briefcase, but I went by Productive Citizen. I still do. And but yeah, I'm a member. I'm a founder of Army of Techno. That's our group. But yeah, I go by Productive Citizen.
Yeah, hence your Twitter name.
That fills in some gaps. Now I get it.
It's all falling into place.
There's all the Army of Techno lore right there.
Yep. Yeah, good job raising money. That's a very needed cause, and
yes,
and you did that.
On behalf of Michigan, thank you.
Yes, Brian feels close ties with Michigan.
It was really good to be back in Michigan, and Detroit is turning around. There's a concerted effort on the part of a few billionaires who are from Michigan. Dan Gilbert, the owner of the Red Wings. his name's escaping me right now.
You're thinking of Mike Ilitch.
Yeah, Mike Ilitch, and then also Penske.
Owner of the Tigers too.
That's right, and also Penske. All three of them are coming in and buying Detroit real estate hand over fist, and they're refurbishing it. You know, I was joking with some people there. I'm like, you guys have a Buffalo Wild Wings in downtown Detroit now? I'm like, that's a sign of civilization as far as I'm concerned.
You can get 50-cent wings on Thursdays. That's all you need.
I mean, compared to like I hadn't been to Michigan in 10 years, And 10 years ago, downtown Detroit was a ghost town, and it's very vibrant. It was safe. You could, there's all these after parties going on. You could walk around downtown Detroit and not feel concerned about your safety. It was, I was really impressed, because you just look at, I was staying in Ann Arbor for some of the week, and the houses in Ann Arbor cost like $400,000. Meanwhile, if you go to Detroit, you can get that same style house for $50,000. So at some point, the cost of living is going to be too compelling, and I think it's already happening.
So there you go, nervous wasps. You should all flock to Detroit.
I wouldn't say that. I would say young people. I would say a company that doesn't require people to come to their location. If you're a services-oriented business online, I think Amazon should be buying up warehouse space in Detroit. There's a rumor that Google is going to buy a huge chunk of Detroit and do their self-driving car project.
Whatever there. Google does.
No,
they're just like mad. They're like a mad billionaire at this point.
Well, but also Larry and Sergey, they also went to University of Michigan, so it's a lot of Michigan men coming back to the city because they see value in it, and I think that's going to have to be how it's done. And it was really exciting. I think the city looks better than it has in a real long time. So that was cool to see. But yeah,
I've never been before or after, so I wouldn't notice the difference. But it's good to hear that they're doing better.
Generally speaking, Detroit's not as nasty as it's made out to be. There are parts of it that are rough, but it's a pretty unfairly maligned city. Even at its worst, it was pretty unfairly maligned.
Yeah, everybody saw the photos being passed around of like, look at this blown out town that
hate it.
No one's on the streets and yeah. So
no, I mean it's
like people have to be living there, right? Like,
yeah. No, but I don't know. I went to the historical Edison district, in Detroit, and this is where the Motown folks were. This is like the height of industry. These beautiful homes, right? All the movers and shakers of the United States lived in this neighborhood, and now it's like 60% of the homes are literally like falling apart. And then there's these beautiful homes right next door. So it's weird to see. I was working with one of these DJs who lives down there, and he has this beautiful home, and then 2 doors down is a home that's literally collapsing in on itself. So it's this weird. It's like you're right in the sense that it is kind of an abandoned. It's an abandoned metropolis. It has a capacity for 1 million people, and only 300-some thousand live there. I drove by this beautiful school, and this is really what was heartbreaking. Is like the architecture of Detroit is unbelievable, and you see these like gorgeous buildings, and they're just falling apart because the government wouldn't maintain them. Because the whole city was built on the idea that property taxes will sustain an infrastructure for 1 million people. Well, when only 300,000 people live there, that means 70% of the city is unfunded. So it's something that I don't know. It made me feel like we need to have a federal tax that subsidizes local education. That was my takeaway. Is that this whole idea that property tax dictates quality education is wrong, and we need to do something about it. But that's enough of my soapbox about Detroit.
Wow, that went in a different direction than I pictured, but that was cool. That was nice to hear our Michigan update. So
I played a mobile game.
what did you play on mobile?
Hex FR VR. It's that game I was talking about, that little puzzle game that's like a hexagon. I still play it. But that's about it. I wish I played Rocket League.
I mean, I know what Brian has been playing, Overwatch, and
oh god.
So okay. I feel like we've talked a lot about Overwatch.
We have, and I will
have to move things along. So, are there any new observations about Overwatch that you want to touch on?
Brian,
I don't know.
Who's your main? I just want to know. Who's your main?
Oh, I know.
If you look at the screen, that it's Diva. If you look at my stats screen, but I've been trying to play a few other characters. Yeah, Diva is by a long shot my main. I play Mercy a lot. I've been trying to get better with Tracer because I think that she's a really fun character, and now that not everybody is picking her, I feel a little bit better about using her once in a while. But it's very difficult. Like I don't know. Like I still kind of feel that people don't really know how to play the game yet, And
Yeah.
this news, I don't know if we're going to talk about it later, that they've pushed back the competitive aspect of it, is fine with me because nobody really knows what they're doing yet.
That
You have a
wasn't really on
handful
my
of
list, but
people.
yeah, we can talk about
Yeah.
it.
I mean, well, yeah, because they just, it's not really a big deal. They just pushed it back to July, which I guess some people are probably mad about, but really, you need a couple more months in the lab to kind of figure the characters out to get to a competitive space, if you ask me. But I'm just kind of amazed at just like the depth and the complexity of it. Like, I was listening to a different podcast, and they were talking about
It's
how
okay. We're all friends in the podcasting world.
Okay, I was listening to the Beastcast, and they were mentioning how McCree will actually reload his gun when you do his dodge roll. I had no idea. That completely changes how you play McCree. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like there's all this different stuff, and like I've seen people still complaining about, well, there's no story, there's no campaign, and all that. Like, it's like half a game. It's not. It is a full-featured, deep, complex game. You're getting a great value for the money, and they're just going to keep adding to it. So I'm really excited to see where they go next with it.
Yeah, I mean, after we recorded last week, our full review went up, and we gave it a 9. So that's like a Shack News 10.
Too low.
Yeah.
But
So now we have 3 9s?
I know it's been a really good start of the year.
It's been a great year. Like,
it's been
So if
kind
you
of crazy how much
you-
quality has been in the early part of this year.
Combined Overwatch, Doom, and Uncharted, that's game of the year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that they're all going to be at least in the discussion.
Doom.
I know Doom is at the top of a lot of lists.
it's a hard call for me between Doom and Overwatch.
It is. They're both. I love them both for such different reasons. At any rate, yeah. Still loving Overwatch. I'm going to talk about one new thing here real quick. My review hasn't gone up yet. I haven't even actually written it yet. But I played Kirby. Is it just called Kirby Planet Robobot or Kirby on Planet
Something
Robobot?
like that. I just call it Kirby Robo.
Kirby, it's Kirby in a mech suit. Like the
Yeah.
If anyone remembers playing Mega Man X, the mech suits that he would get into, those like kind of big bubbly ones, with
Yeah.
arms and legs. It looks kind of like that. Only because it's Kirby. The cool hook of this is that you can suck in, enemies and absorb their powers like Kirby always does. But if you're in a mech suit, you like scan the enemy, and your mech suit like changes configuration to some like super powered version of that ability. So like the jet ability, you can suck in a jet, and for Kirby it means like you get like sort of a rocket jump, and you can sort of like dash, and it's like that's cool. But when you absorb it as the mech, it's like that means you're about to go into a section where you are playing an old school shoot 'em up as a jet. Like you're playing as a mech and jet.
This sounds great.
Yeah, it does. And so they do some cool stuff with the platforming. It's not especially challenging. It's a Kirby game, but they do some cool stuff with the platforming and actually the puzzles even, because sometimes there's they play with the foreground and the background, and there's times that you have to sort of play with that interaction to get these cubes, because like every Nintendo game, like every Nintendo platformer these days, there's little collectibles that unlock the boss stage at the end of every world. And it's not that many. It's not that hard to get enough. I think it's like 6 per boss world, and there's like 3 per stage. So even if you just got all of them in 2 stages, you'd be fine. So it's not that hard to get them, but they do cool things with the puzzles and without spoiling it. It's coming out on Friday, but without spoiling it, the way it ends is like just hilariously badass. Like they go full on like. Again, I don't want to say too much, but they go full on badass in a way that I did not expect a Kirby game to go, and it was just so over the top for a Kirby game that it made me laugh a lot. So I really enjoyed it. It's
Just
fun.
imagining Kirby like muttering to himself, "Rip and tear, rip
It's
and
not.
tear."
It's not difficult, and because it's not difficult, it's not very long. So, I think older gamers will be like, okay, especially if you just play the first world, because the first world was just straight up boring. It's like. It's so simplistic in teaching you the concepts that you're just like, I think I fell asleep, like literally fell asleep.
So
playing
two
the first world.
questions. One, if I like Triple Deluxe, will I like this?
It's better than Triple Deluxe.
Okay. 2, because I love Triple Deluxe. 2, did the amiibo stuff, like, I don't know if they sent you any of the amiibos to try out or anything, but did that seem like it was even worth...
I think I actually
investing
have a
in?
Kirby amiibo, but I need to try that before I
Okay.
write my review. So I haven't actually
Because
tried that yet.
they're
I've also
putting out those
unlocked,
two.
finishing the campaign also unlocks some little mini games that I haven't tried yet, so I need to try those too. So all of that will be happening in the near future, probably right after recording this show.
Awesome.
And then I'll have a review up later this week. But yeah, quick impressions, sneak peek for those of you who want to know what my review is going to be like. It's good. I liked it. So
And
that said,
that's on 3DS.
it is 3DS. Yeah, it feels like the 3DS is winding down, and this is probably one of the last 3DS games.
Nah, I mean, we still got Pokemon coming.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, Pokemon is going to be the swan song, but
Yeah.
this is probably probably safe to say the last Kirby game.
Yeah.
Hell
Hell of a run.
Yeah.
I think
3DS.
it's a good one.
I think the 3DS had a pretty solid performance. It wasn't.
I mean, it was no DS, but that would be crazy.
Yeah.
I would say that games wise, it competed just as well. Sales wise, yeah, the DS outclasses it. But if we're talking game library, there are stuff on the 3DS that I would put up with anything else released this generation.
Talk
Oh,
about,
yeah.
talk
straight
about
game
tough
to game.
comparison, though. Right?
Yeah. No, it's a terrible comparison.
You have Wii and you have 3DS, the two best-selling devices of their class, and then you have to try to beat that with your next generation.
Yeah.
That's damn near impossible.
That's why I always thought it was funny when I saw people saying, "Well, the 3DS is failing." No, it's just not selling as much as this insane lightning in a bottle thing.
Yeah. Tell that to Sony Vita.
Yeah. Vita would kill for 3DS numbers, man.
Right? They would
Oh,
die.
poor Vita.
Oh, I love the Vita too, but man alive.
I don't mean to kick Vita fanboys while they're down, but I'm just saying, Sony would kill to have the 3DS sales.
Like real talk behind the scenes, I always bring my portable systems with me to E3. Obviously, I barely have time to play them during the show, but on the way to and from, I'm like, do I even bring my Vita this year? Because every year I bring it. For the last probably year or two, I brought it to events and just I've been playing 3DS instead. I don't know. It's sad. I'm still downloading the free games they give away on PS Plus, but it's usually I try it for 5 minutes. I'm like, nah, I'm good.
I came dangerously close to getting that Persona dancing game for the Vita, just because I feel like I should have something on it. I haven't touched that thing in forever. I don't think I've charged it in probably 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Whenever I turn it on to actually download it, it's oh, it's been without power for too long, and it died. So anyway, we can move on. We can stop kicking the Vita.
It's a great system, but it just did not. It got a bad. It did not get treated well.
The other thing is that's Sony's fault. That's not.
Absolutely.
That's not the developer's fault. Sony just cut and bait on that thing, and they were like, "All right, fuck it."
Yeah, they didn't even try, really.
So yeah. Anyway, the topic this week is not about the Vita. It is about E3. To set the stage, several big publishers have pulled out entirely. We talked about that before in the newsy bits. The press conferences are spreading to earlier in the week. There's weird E3 creep going on, where there's a couple of press conferences and even events that I need to go to on Sunday. And the event is opening itself slightly to the public with sort of a concurrent public event nearby that they already sold out of tickets for. So in the span of a year, E3 has already changed dramatically. So what about 5 years? Here's some questions to get our juices flowing. Given the current trends, where's the show going? Will the future include expensive booths or press-only demos? Will it move out of the LA Convention Center again? And finally, the navel-gazy question that I don't want to spend too long on because I hate navel-gazy ponderousness in general, but how can and should the media, meaning us, adapt to a show that is slowly taking its messaging directly to fans? Asif, as the owner of a video game website, how about we start with you? Given your vast experience with E3, where do you see all this going?
Everyone likes to say that E3's dying or dead or whatever, and it seems like every 5 years we go through this. Kind of concurrent with the console cycle, if you ask me. So whenever there's a big console launch, you better believe E3 is going to be a huge ordeal, and there's going to be big booths, and there's going to be parties, and there's going to be Microsoft Xbox experience on whatever day, and Sony's going to have their press conference at the Coliseum. That's not going away. What's going on, and someone had mentioned this, is that how we are as people who consume gaming news are getting our news is changing, and Nintendo, Steve, you've written about this, was at the forefront of it. They said, you know what? Screw the Nokia Center. We're not going there anymore. In fact, we're going to go hold a Smash tournament there instead. But there was no press conference for the last, 2-3 years from them.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish I was wrong when I wrote that editorial saying, like, hey, Nintendo is setting a trend that everyone else is going to follow.
You were dead right. I mean, this was, I don't know,
yeah.
It was probably 18 months ago, almost 2 years ago that you wrote that. But, yeah, what I see is everyone looked at Nintendo's success with Direct, and they're like, you know what? Let's do something similar. So EA is doing their own
EA Play, yeah.
Yeah, and then I don't know what Activision has planned, but they're not.
I know what they have planned for us. I have no idea what they have planned for the public.
I don't know if they do.
They are scheduling press appointments, so I know that much. But
yeah, so
I have no idea what
E3 is still going to be a thing. Where it's going to be is another question. And this idea that companies can hold simultaneous independent events is probably going to just keep going. The larger companies like EA. At the same time, you have companies like Disney. Remember when Disney pulled out of E3? We were like, really? Then they shut down Disney.
And then they're like, oh, we're just getting out of games altogether. Yeah.
So that. But you know, you have Oculus that's still going to be at E3. You have Nintendo that's still at E3. Microsoft's still at E3. Ubisoft.
Yeah, I mean, plenty of big publishers are there. All the console manufacturers. We're right next to Ubisoft, which is like one of the three biggest, publishers in the world, probably. Non-console publishers in the world. So like, there's still plenty going on at the E3 show floor. I think we are seeing a shift, though. I think the people that are calling that for E3's death and saying like, oh, that's the end, it's all going to shit. That's probably not true. It's still going to stick around, but
it's cyclical.
We are going to see more movement towards what Nintendo and Activision are doing, where it's like, hey, we don't need a gigantic booth because, frankly, the press that shows up doesn't care if they have a gigantic booth. Like when I went to see Activision at E3, I wasn't like, ooh, what a pretty booth.
Well, you remember their booth? It was kind of absurd. It was just a giant screen.
Yeah, I mean and
there was no playable demos.
It was weird because basically, again, peek behind the curtain here. They have a gigantic screen, and they had like maybe, I don't know, 10 demo stations set up for like Skylanders, and then another 10 for Call of Duty or something like that. So there was always like a gigantic line of, I don't know who's attending E3 besides press, just like attendees or GameStop owners or something. Like whoever is there that's not press was like waiting in this huge line, and then you sort of went behind the booth and talked to a press person, and they were like, okay, come upstairs, and they had like an actual upstairs where it was like quiet, and there were little private conference rooms, and so this year they're basically moving to the private conference rooms that are built into the LA Convention Center, and it's like, okay, so for the press it's going to be like kind of exactly the same. You're just not gonna have a gigantic TV screen showing the Call of Duty trailer on loop for like the entire 3 days,
I don't know. Were you at E3 when they had a party Activision did at the Staples Center?
I don't think so. I'm not an E3 party person anyway. I've gone
no. I mean, this was. Sorry, I don't even mean to call it a party. It was a press conference. I put quotes around. So it was like, here's a trailer for Call of Duty, and now here's Eminem with Rihanna, and now here's a trailer for some other game, and now they had this lady who came out and it was on like a 100-foot pole, and she was dancing on like 100 feet in the air on this pole. I'm like, I felt like I was in Rome at its peak, I was like, this is what the top
it's all about the collapse.
You know what I mean? I was like, this is what the top of E3 looks like, is a girl on a giant pole dancing with Eminem coming out on stage and rapping, and like, it was so not E3, it was so not video game. I was like, yeah, this is what a tip of a conference looks like.
Hedonism bot should have just like rolled by.
Totally, just eating grapes. He's like, oh, delicious. No, but like, it reminded me of the Dreamcast peak when they had their booth at E3, and their booth was ridiculous. They had a ridiculous party, and that was the end of Sega. Like a year later, that was, so that was the Space Channel 5 launch year.
Yeah. And I mean,
to
like
give.
sometimes you can even tell like the health of a company's lineup by what they have. I think the last few years Konami's been very anemic. It's been like a gigantic carpeted area, and there's a line to like go in and see a trailer for Metal Gear, and that was like basically it. Like Square was very like weirdly quiet last year. I don't think it'll be as quiet this year because they've got Eidos stuff, Eidos
Yes.
properties.
It's funny though because people like to talk about PAX and all these other consumer-facing events as being the reason that E3 is dying. I'm like, I haven't been to a PAX yet because they're insanely crowded, and like
Mhm.
I like that fact that E3 isn't that. E3 is crowded, but it's not like PAX crowded.
Yeah, I mean,
And
my view on that comparison is skewed anyway because it's like E3, I get like the velvet rope treatment where they're like, oh, you're with the press, right this way, and like PAX, it's like, hey, I'm here,
Da-de-da!
I'm here covering. I mean, like PAX, you can make press appointments, but also sometimes you just need to try a game to write about it, and it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm waiting in this line for the next 3.5 hours, and like that'll be your day. it's,
I mean, like
it's kind of a pain in the ass.
I try to always go to GDC and always go to E3 if I can every year because I think they're the two most important events in gaming. I don't think that's changed this year. I think, the real fact is we're going to get news at E3. So
Oh,
as
yeah.
a media outlet, being at E3 and us, our pivot having a booth at E3 is kind of a signal that, this thing's not going away. There's going to be news.
I mean, how much of this is like the PR mechanisms sort of being used to the timing being set this way? Like June is your reveal, October is your ramp up, November is your release. Like that's kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
And it works pretty well. Like having a June reveal and then having like the next few months to like sort of build up a drumbeat and then having, the big PR push and then the release. Like it's timed in sort of an ideal way for the way the release calendar works. So as long as the release calendar is tied to the holiday season, there needs to be something big around the June or July area to make all these announcements.
So do you think we're going to cancel Christmas anytime soon?
That's the next step. Yeah, we're going to cancel Christmas. The war on Christmas is going to succeed.
I just got a call from Disney. Yeah, they're canceling Christmas.
We are all going to be saying Happy Holidays and Christmas will be dead. All praise.
In a world where that cycle exists, I don't see how E3 will just fall off the face of the earth. It can contract. It has in the past, and it will again. It could be. We're witnessing it right now. But this idea that it's going to go away, I really doubt it. I think
it's not even. I wouldn't even call it a contraction necessarily. I'm sure that publishers are spending less money. Like Activision is spending less money by not having a gigantic TV screen, and that's just smart business. But in terms of the number of announcements you make, the kind of announcements you make, I think that's probably going to stay pretty consistent. And what we're seeing instead of a contraction, I would call it more of like a transformation. That's sort of this big industry event is following what the rest of the industry is doing, which is taking messaging directly to fans. You're hiring journalists to run your PR wing as your community manager, basically. Mm-hmm. They know how to speak to game fans. You're producing video, like game publishers are getting more savvy about producing videos in a way that like appeals to people directly and just like brings the message directly to them. And we report on the news and we still get heads up with press releases and stuff like that beforehand. Sometimes we get like embargoed information and they invite us to go see things ahead of time. I think that's going to continue. But at the same time, there's a lot more emphasis on, hey, we can just send our messaging directly out.
Yeah.
I think the reason they have to keep us around for a while, at least I'm hoping, the reason they have to keep us around for a while is it's like a trust thing. If you change it so that all of your messaging is internal, people are like, that's suspicious,
Yeah.
So you need to at least still engage with the media so that people don't think that you're just like filthy liars.
I was going to say, you still need editorial. The other thing is, like, you're dead right. The whole taking things directly to consumers. I think Astroneer is a fine example. They have a blog. It's run by it's a little dev. It's a bunch of independent developers. They did a live stream last week where they showed multiplayer for the first time. They showed development live. I think devs are looking at the games media and they're looking at Twitch and they're saying, well, why do you even bother giving XYZ streamer our game? Why don't we just stream it? You know, so
Yep.
I think as much
I
as
mean, look at
people like
Nintendo. Nintendo's plan is to just stream Zelda.
yeah,
Like that's what
Which-
they're doing at E3. They're going to stream
you want
one
to make
game.
me even more mad at you. Don't let me play Zelda at E3. Yeah, that's the perfect recipe. No, Treehouse Live. It's funny because Nintendo so frequently is panned for being behind the curve on things.
Mm-hmm.
They were way ahead on this, and
Mhm.
it's working for them, kinda. Well, we'll see. But yeah, I think Treehouse is great. I mean, I enjoy watching the first day of Treehouse Live is awesome every year.
I think I've heard it somewhere, and I don't want to get on too much of a Zelda tangent, but I think it speaks to larger trends about the game industry because, like we've said a couple times, Nintendo sort of led the charge on this. But I heard someone say somewhere that like we don't. I think the Nintendo Directs are helpful in a way that streaming a game isn't, because hearing what the producer of the game wants this game to be tells you a lot about it. Just seeing it streamed, you're like, oh, okay, well now I guess I know what the first 30 minutes are like, and you can understand how it plays and stuff. But you don't get like a fuller view of, the scope and ambition and like the concepts that they had in mind.
And no offense to streamers, but when it comes to describing a game, they're not that detailed. They're like, "This is awesome." It's like, okay, cool, but
Well, I think that ties in. This is like such a minor side point, but I'll just say it real quick. I think that also ties in with controls being so universalized these days. The advent of streaming being a big thing is largely thanks to when you see a shooter, you basically know how it works. Like you could, if you're watching a streamer play a shooter, you could practically like put a controller in your hand and pretend you're playing and ape the movements with all the correct button mapping, because like shooters have a specific control scheme. Same thing with platformers. Same thing with basically every other kind of genre.
you're dead right. Like,
so streamers had to like explain like, okay, here's how this game controls. Like in the N64 days, when there was a lot of experimentation, people didn't really know it worked. Then it wouldn't work. Like streaming would be like boring and kind of frustrating to watch.
Yeah, but I think what you said, having the dev there telling you the intent behind every aspect of the game, it's a different level of depth that you get from just handing your early release game to a streamer and say, hey, go stream this for an hour.
I mean, it's the difference between like the Iwata Asks segments and watching a video, watching a trailer. Because Iwata Asks were like, rest his soul, like we all miss Iwata. Like, those were such a brilliant idea of, like, hey, Iwata has a history in game development. He knows what questions to ask to draw interesting answers. And he was doing, like, internal interviews. It was a great little feature. And that just brings up more information.
And genuinely good ones, too. That's the thing. It's like, they were on par with some of the best journalism, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So, Brian, we've sort of been chattering amongst ourselves a lot. As somebody who has not been to E3 and sort of watches it from the outside, what's your take on all of this?
Speaking as one of the unwashed masses that are grasping at your coats for
Filthy
dollops
normie.
of information, yes. So here's the thing. I think that the idea of E3 becoming more consumer focused is basically the way that both companies and fans want it. If you look at the communication, the chatter around any given E3, it's never about, oh, well, this is an interesting, like, I wonder what the critical analysis of this is, or I wonder what the story behind this is. Everybody, like most people, just want to watch to get excited about this thing they like, right? And so the conversation is never from a sort of like critical perspective. It's always just, I want to see whatever you're going to show me, and I'm going to be really, really excited about it, even if it's just like
I have already decided that I'm excited.
Yeah, we've already decided it's going to be the greatest game of all time based on this trailer, right? And that's what they want. Like, and so if you're a developer, if you're a publisher, you almost don't really care if there's anybody trying to be the middleman in that message, right? You can just, like you're saying, just put it right out there. Nintendo did this, and I think Nintendo's like a company where that's a key part of their demographic are the people who just like unapologetically almost uncritically just lap up whatever Nintendo's doing, right? And I
There's
say
a
that as
trend
somebody who
across the
likes
press.
Nintendo.
There's a trend across the press in general, not just games press, but like movies, music, even politics. That we're moving away from the media being the gatekeepers of information,
Mm-hmm.
and then more being curators and interpreters, which
Yeah.
is sort of what I see as our job in modern day.
Yeah,
Um,
and with that, I think I don't know if people really want that gatekeeping. I don't think they really want that interpretive forum anymore. I think they just want to have an echo chamber where the things that they believe are true are true.
Yeah, that's
And
totally
where
a problem.
I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I'm saying like if you are a fan of say Sony or Microsoft, right, and you want to believe that everything they're putting out is great, what better source to validate your perceptions than an E3 press conference?
Yeah.
What are you like? People will take time off of work. They will do that kind of stuff. Just be excited about
And
these
when they're
games in the
when
future.
they're talking in such a way that it's meant to feed into that culture of like we're winning and here's why.
Yeah,
You know,
and there's a disturbing kind of undercurrent to that. But this, to me, like, yeah, I could see Sony, Microsoft, other big companies saying, you know what, we don't need E3, we don't need these things. We'll just go out and put our own propaganda out there at a given time, and we'll hype up this event and make people excited about it without having to play ball with somebody else.
But if any of the big three pulled out of E3, it would be viewed as a sign of weakness. It would.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the thing. Is that
That's
as
why
much
Nintendo's
as
still there.
Exactly. Nintendo has no reason to be there. They could hang out in Redmond this next week, right, and just stream Treehouse from the Treehouse.
We don't know.
Yeah. For all we know, Nintendo's
I've
booth
asked
is
about
gonna
appointments and gotten nothing.
Yeah, Nintendo's booth might be smaller than Shack News this year. We don't know. But,
wouldn't that be a thing?
That would be crazy. But we got a pretty nice sized booth. But anyway, like it was funny. I was talking to someone about this whole Twitch versus traditional games media thing, and what we found with our Twitch streams is that we introduce people to Shack News through Twitch, right? The people who watch Twitch religiously, they don't tend to read a whole lot.
No,
they're visual people. So this is why when I started investing in GamerHub, GamerHub.tv was just a video content creation company. When we bought Shack, it was to leverage our video content creation. So it's like it's the whole games media has to pivot. And if you look at Giant Bomb, yes, they still do editorial, but most of their stuff is personality driven.
Yep.
Podcasts.
And arguably even their editorial stuff is personality driven.
Yeah.
Like you read a review by Brad Shoemaker and it means more because you heard so much from him on like podcasts and stuff that you know his personality.
Yeah, you can't replicate a Dan Reichert or a Steve Watts or an Asif Khan. Like those are things like you can get the information from a press release anywhere. But I think that's a pretty astute observation. But I'm not a fan of this, honestly. I would rather see really good quality writing, and I'm not a big fan of just like, oh, let's put this wacky person on video, because honestly, I will read faster than anybody talking on a video ever can. Right?
That's what always annoys me. Like I
sit through and watch a video.
Not to go on a super tangent, but like when I just need a quick bit of info and I click on a thing and it's a video and I'm like, no,
I closed the tab.
Just let me scan it and find the info I need.
Yeah.
No, Brian, I completely agree. It's just something from a market analysis standpoint that I'm witnessing.
You're absolutely right.
The large, younger demographic that consumes games media is visual. They don't want to read articles. And then look at Giant Bomb. They released their Doom review 2 weeks after the game came out because they focused on live looks. You know what I mean? So it's like you look at how they prioritize, and I think Giant Bomb's a great example of this. Like they're doing very well. But like you said,
the thing that bothers me about that trend in general, I mean, I'm just getting off on like a grumpy old man on the porch, like yelling at kids. Tangent. But the thing that bothers me as a person who like got into writing because I like writing, because I like the written word, there are ways that you can phrase things that come off the wrong way when they're spoken. Like when they're written, you can use different language, and it's very eloquent, and it paints an image in a certain way that doesn't sound the same when you're talking. Like when I read something, I'll compliment another site, but it's within Gamer Network. When I read something by Jeremy Parrish, who I've always really respected his writing, like he writes in a way that I know he does also speak, but like generally you couldn't have like a video just saying those words. It wouldn't sound right. It would sound kind of stilted. But in written form, it sounds really nice. Like it sounds elegant. And, and I feel like we're losing some elegance with this push towards video. But that's
why
my
you're
general
seeing
rant about the trend.
that's why you're seeing games companies scoop up talented games journalists and push them into PR. Because they're like, hey, this guy's actually really eloquent. He should be writing our press releases. He should be our point of contact for PR. And it's just like that's this weird evolution that's occurring in the games industry. Is like they're picking off like the talented people and pushing them into the industry.
Yeah.
And then the media sites are left to reinvent themselves. And I mean, that's what Shaq did to begin with. I mean, Shaq was a Quake fan site that decided to start covering gaming news, and now we're covering even broader things. So it's like, it's I think it's really interesting.
We're not covering movies yet.
No.
Wait till later in the summer for that.
But Steve, if you go on the Chatty, there's a thread about every new release every week. Like our community.
There's sometimes several threads. I think there was like daily Doom threads.
Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's like that's the thing is the community, in conjunction with our site, covers almost everything. And it's been doing so.
And they usually beat us to some news stories.
Oh yeah, when we scoop the Chatty, we're like, yeah, screw you guys. Because I mean, all they have to do is post a link. We have to write an article, fact check it, all this stuff. So it takes a little bit more time, but
put it in the CMS, all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think the conclusion that we're sort of reaching to bring it back to E3 is that this E3 is changing in ways that are indicative of larger industry changes. It's not like the show itself is in some kind of trouble. It's more everything is changing, and E3 is showing signs of that as well now.
I'm going to give some inside baseball real quick about E3. This is our first year. This is my first year ever having a booth at anything. It's expensive, and companies are like, you know what? They may be fed up with dealing with some of the folks over there at at the LA Convention Center. So they're like, what? Why don't we just rent someplace else in LA? And
especially since again, for us in the press, it doesn't matter, and for sending the message directly to fans, you just set up a camera.
Yeah.
You don't actually need a big booth anymore.
So I think there's some resistance on the part of the larger companies where they're like, you know what, we don't need you. We can do this ourselves. Whereas the smaller companies, they do need GES, they do need ESA, and I think ESA does a great job. You know what I mean? Like we've worked.
I mean, for their part, they are doing this semi-public event. I feel like that's testing the waters. That they're trying to figure out how this thing changes, and that's one possible avenue, is making it a public event for some of the days, or having a separate public event or something like that.
But you asked that question, how do media companies adapt to the changing dynamic? I'm like, well, look at us. We're going to be on the show floor live streaming all week, and that's something we've never done, and it's something that a lot of other successful websites do. So we're going to see how this goes, but I think it's going to be very successful, and I think that's kind of.
Yeah, I'm excited. We've got some cool streaming things set up.
Yeah, I mean, getting devs to come on Shack News Twitch and talk about their games and show us stuff that we may not have seen elsewhere. I think that's the future. Is that it's about adapting. Like, we're not gonna just throw away our writers. We're not gonna stop writing.
Oh, thank God.
No, we can't. We simply can't. At the end of the day, like, we still need reviews. You still need reviews. I go back to the Doom review. That's that David wrote. You're not going to get those kinds of impressions from a Twitch streamer or a YouTuber. You're going to get that from a gamer that spent a good week or two playing the game and thought deeply about it. And I think there's still people out there. There's still a large market of people that want to read reviews or care about individuals and want to know their opinion. So I think that's going to be this delicate balance, is focusing on being personality driven, but still hanging on to what were the core tenets of games journalism. So I think that's the challenge for us. The challenge for E3 is making the devs feel like they are like welcome, because
And
sometimes
like they're being given something of value for their money.
yeah,
That they can't just replicate elsewhere.
because if they don't, you're gonna have what happened in the mid 2000s again. And also, I think it is cyclical. If we get a PS 4.5 and an Xbox 1.11 this year,
Which is looking very likely, both of those things.
yeah, I mean that's why they're there, to show us that and to hype that. Next year, it might be more subdued because we're going to be, I don't know, unless these are huge jumps, we're going to be kind of trailing off in this console cycle.
Yeah.
Unless and then Nintendo steals the show next year. But yeah, no,
I don't know. I'm kind of wondering. This is a topic for another time, but I'm kind of wondering if these big console moves mean that Microsoft or Sony or both are going to be moving towards just yearly iteration, like not necessarily big iteration, but just like every year we're going to have a new thing, like a new piece of hardware, because hardware is the thing that gets people excited. That's the Apple model. Like every year they show off hardware.
Ask Atari how that worked out for them. It's
yeah,
a horrible idea.
I'll dig up some landfill carts and find out.
Yeah. I'm just saying the iteration that occurred in the early '80s on the Atari systems is what led to their demise.
But I think they're thinking of it more like the Apple model, which I don't know. I'm not convinced that that's necessarily transferable to the console model. But I think that Microsoft and Sony think that it is.
It's not. What consumer can spend $500 a year on a system?
Yeah, I mean, that's insane.
I'd rather spend that on a GPU.
Upgrade path that we haven't heard about, like an upgrade path, like, oh, you can send in your Xbox and we'll sell those as official refurbished units, and you'll get X number of dollars off a new one or something.
And talking to devs, there's a fragmentation on the development side now, because now you have to develop for 2 consoles to make it work on Xbox and 2 consoles to make it work on PlayStation.
Yeah, it's a weird market we're heading towards. We need to move on to newsy bits, but I want to touch on a couple of user comments here real quick. Zollington said he is absolutely confused by Nintendo's, quote, lineup for E3. They're only showing Zelda via an all-day live stream. What? I can only guess they're going to do some sort of histories of Zelda, because I can't think of any game that would be engaging to watch a game conference-esque stream for an entire day. Also, they don't have any kind of Nintendo Direct to showcase what they have coming up. No info for the SMT4 game. Nothing on SMT versus Fire Emblem. Not even any kind of anniversary check-in on Splatoon. No Amiibo news for Jeff Burke. I like that he threw that in there. So, yeah, Nintendo is very confusing this year. We kind of have already covered that, but I wanted to touch on what he said.
I will tell you, as the resident Zelda skeptic, this is not a fun E3 for me.
As a huge Nintendo fan who also does not give a shit about Zelda.
We're doing our Chattycast listeners a huge.
This new Zelda looks good, and I'm hoping it turns out well, but
forget about Zelda. It's not coming out this year.
No.
Where the hell's Detective Pikachu?
Right?
Where's Detective Pikachu? Where's Picross 3D 2?
See, okay, whatever, weirdo. But Detective Pikachu is by
3D,
far the gravest omission.
Why isn't that boom, Detective Pikachu, 24-hour live stream?
You want to win E3? Bam, there you go.
All joking aside, and I know that Detective Pikachu is dead serious, but
it's not a joke, Steve.
But
that's serious.
But even if
we're not doing a bit here. Detective Pikachu is amazing.
Even if Nintendo just wanted to emphasize their biggest surefire hit games, they're not even showing Pokemon.
Yeah.
What? You've got a new 3D Pokemon game coming out. Not one of the remakes of the off years, but like a full-fledged Pokemon. You're not showing it at all. It's
trying to figure out Nintendo in 2016 is basically like trying to understand why terrible things happen. They just do.
Why do bad things happen to good people?
Yeah.
Why does Nintendo only show Zelda? So Porcosaurus, I'm not going to read his entire thing, but he was very angry. He said E3 is fucking stupid. He basically said he thought it was dead, but it came back. Worst of all, you knew this was coming. Attempts to make it inclusive and family friendly have gutted any spark of character left. Prediction: it is fucking dead within 5 years. So
Did you like my reply?
Realistic response. And yes, the man with briefcase, aka Awesome Khan, replied, "Thanks for the report from the Sunshine and Puppy Farts HQ, champ." And you got a bunch of LOLs.
Yeah,
Um,
I am LOL champion.
yeah, that was a good lol one. So we can move on real quick to newsy bits before our game. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Oh boy, Steve, our sponsor, as always, Audible.com. They're offering the listeners of the Shack News Chattycast a free audiobook download and a free 30-day trial to check out the service. Lots of great books there. Games, tech, romance, physics.
Romance.
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever you want to read about, it's there. All you got to do is go to audibletrial.com/chattycast, and you can check out any of their over 150,000 books with your free audiobook download. That's audibletrial.com/chattycast.
Thank you. So, newsy bits, real quick. This first one I feel like kind of speaks for itself. There's probably not a lot to say about it, but I wanted to include it because it's an interesting timing on this. The Xbox One, as of yesterday, I think, price dropped to $299 right before E3.
They got to clear out some stock. Like that. Because that's a really good deal if you didn't know in the back of your mind why they were doing it.
Yeah. I mean, like, I imagine someone during this 2-week period being like, $299, hot damn! Like,
yeah.
Buying it and then being really pissed off.
Well, some retailer had some insane deal where you could get like Rare Replay and what was Halo 5 and I think Gears of War and Ori.
That's a lot of game.
And like the terabytes for like $319, and that's a stellar deal.
Yeah,
but
that is crazy.
Yeah, but then I thought about, there's a reason why that's happening.
You're moving units. Yeah, you know something new is coming.
My brother texted me. He texted me right when that news came out. He's like, he had been waiting to get an Xbox One. He's like, do I get an Xbox One? I'm like, no.
We'll keep waiting. You see, here's the thing. Obviously, they're paving the way for new hardware that's going to be at the old price point or maybe a little above it. So, what does this suggest about timing for the new hardware? Does this suggest that it might be coming kind of soon and they really need to move stock, or is it just fall release?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
right.
Both systems fall release. PSVR is going to launch in conjunction with PS4.5. I mean, look at the code names: PS Neo, and then Morpheus. Morpheus and Neo, guys. Come on, it's obvious. They're going to have a bundle. They're going to have a bundle with the VR headset, the stupid little Move controllers, and the
Trinity
console.
bundle.
Yeah. I kind of don't want either of them now.
Because they're associated with that. All right, let's move on to the other newsy bit. No Man's Sky was officially delayed to August 9th.
Oh my God!
And a lot of people are weirdly angry about.
A lot of people are very angry about it. I mean, like whatever. As far as like the timing, like take your time on games. I'm never
completely honest about No Man's Sky. Like shooting from the hip. People are going to be disappointed in that game. I guarantee it.
People are.
Built up with this near religious fervor into this thing that it cannot possibly be.
I think people think that it's something bigger than it actually is.
And part of that's the fans. Part of it's the media. Not Shack News in particular, but there's been a lot of media outlets hyping it up as like this incredible second coming.
The never-ending game, and it's like, no, it's not. It's not that, guys.
It's a randomly generated space game. That's neat.
Yeah,
but it's not worth this much fuss.
Delays in general just don't piss me off. Like sometimes I'll be like, oh, I was looking forward to that, but whatever. Like
what was it?
Take the time to make the game. What I think is funny about this one is that it was scheduled for like right after E3, and I wonder. I'm sure they're taking extra time for like development, but I also kind of wonder if they're like, wait a minute, that's a terrible idea. Like no one's going to play our game. Like there's going to be no reviews out, and if they have faith in it and they want reviews out there to tell people that it's good, like of course they need to give reviewers time, and no one's going to be playing it the week of E3. Like, why did you ever schedule it for then? It was very weird.
The first time we saw No Man's Sky was 2 E3s ago, right? 2014.
Something like that, yeah.
They showed a trailer. It looked awesome, Just looking at it objectively, it looked really cool. People were very excited. I was at the press conference. People were fawning over it. It's 2 years later, and we really haven't seen much of an evolution. The thing about Hello Games was they're a small dev team. It's like 5 guys, and the only games I'm not dogging them, but they've only made mobile games up until this point.
I mean, that's sort of what got people's attention, right? Like people were like, "Holy shit, the Joe Danger team is making like this."
Does it surprise me that they're taking on this ambitious thing and they're having to delay it? No, but talking about procedurally generated space games, Astroneer is something I'm way more excited about than No Man's Sky, and it's going to have a much broader.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I played it. I just watched that live stream last week. I'm way more excited about that game, and I think it has a much broader appeal than No Man's Sky. And I just think that people were really focused because No Man's Sky was that first one to say we're gonna have procedurally generated planets, and it basically was everything that Destiny wasn't. I wanted to fly around in space in Destiny, and this game gave me that. And this is right on the heels of Destiny kind of stinking. So. I think that was part of the fervor, but it's dying down, and there's gonna be so many games that come out by the time No Man's Sky comes out that I think you're absolutely right, Brian.
I bet it still gets mentioned in Game of the Year discussions. I mean, having never played it, I bet it gets mentioned in Game of the Year discussions on like sheer ambition. Like,
I'm not saying it's gonna be bad.
No. I know. I'm just saying, like, I think that like even if it doesn't quite deliver on the promise. I feel like people are going to give it a lot of credit for like, wow, you took on like a really huge idea,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, like you'll see that in like people who are rational about this stuff, but the fan base.
Well, yeah. I'm talking about the Game of the Year.
What was promised? I want to do this. It's like the Destiny reaction. Now, Destiny is kind of a different thing because they really did completely change what that game was just before release. But like this, I don't know. Like to me, first off, there is, and I don't want to be controversial here, but there is no reason to send death threats and angry emails and just
I don't think that's controversial.
Like to developers and the press covering it. Like I love like when they were talking about Kotaku. Well, Kotaku shouldn't have published that information. It's news. Okay, maybe they weren't ready to publish it right at that moment. But you know what? The story was going to have to come out, and they had a responsibility to publish it.
What does delaying it by a couple days really do?
It does nothing. But this is why I get exhausted with the whole game community sometimes.
Let's just state that death threats over video games, bad.
We're taking a hardline stance here on Shack News.
Shack News does not condone death threats.
So here's the messed up thing, okay? I've seen people, honest to God, try to answer this saying, "Are you dead?" No? Then it wasn't a death threat. Okay.
That's not how threats work.
Exactly. Now
That's not what words mean.
Exactly.
These are the same people that can't read Shack News. They just want to watch a YouTube. They watch YouTube telling everybody
this is the kind of thing that makes me less worried about E3 going down the tubes and more worried about society. Just the world. Down the tubes.
I mean, this is just an extension of the whole ethics and games journalism debate, and it's like, God, it's video games, people. Like,
I support ethics in games journalism.
That's trademark Shack News, but seriously, it's video games. Chill.
Yeah.
Quit trying to like make this bigger than it is.
Don't get your identity so wrapped up in your hobby that you take things this personally.
Because of the anonymity of the internet, people are so quick to threaten people. But in reality,
we're going off on a tangent here. But did you see someone on NeoGAF was like, "Have you ever sent a death threat? Let me know."
Yeah, it's like they're a bunch of cowards that are hiding behind their screen names. Like this is. None of these people are actually going to do that, but it's just this is the kind of venom that's on the internet that I hate.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and it has an effect. It really does. Like people are like, oh, it's just just people on the internet. No, it has a genuine effect.
It has a friendly effect. It also has the effect of just making people who might otherwise be interested in the culture and in the world of games.
Yep.
You're doing yourself out of it.
Yeah. You're doing this no favors. You're doing this hobby no favors.
It hurts game development.
Yep.
Because it discourages game developers. And that's like, if you love games, you should not be threatening to kill game developers.
Or anybody. Just
anyone. Anybody.
Let's just extend that.
Don't send death threats to anybody.
Yeah.
I feel like it's insane.
We shouldn't have to say these things.
It's insane that we're having this conversation right now. We should probably talk about something else.
It's been a weird couple years for the games industry. Let's move on to Beat the Doc.
All
Part
right.
of the show.
But just real quick, send your death threats to asif.com and shacknews.com.
Yeah, you can collect them all and make a feature out of it.
Yeah,
So
that'll be fun. It won't be disturbing.
time for Read the Doc, the part of the show in which I abuse my hosting powers. Today's game is called Bad PR. Among many other things, E3 means we're going to be subjected to press conferences with awkward messaging, carefully massaged from publishers with all the subtlety of a greasy used car salesman. We all miss Jack Tretton. He was such a great spokesperson for his company. So I'm going to read a quote from an E3 press conference of days past, and you match it to the company.
Okay.
As always, I'm going to start real easy. Buzz in with your name. Attack its weak point for massive damage.
Buzz, my name.
Brian? Yeah.
That's
Brian.
that's a Sony with a Genji on the PS3.
That is Sony. You don't actually have to name the game, but yes, that
But
is
I
Sony.
did.
Wow.
Genji.
And I love how
tryhard.
I love how Bravely Default has giant enemy crabs
based,
in it.
based on this is based on actual historical battles. So we have this giant enemy crab.
Yep.
I don't know who read that script. Anyway,
Nobody did.
number 2. It's a video game you play away from the screen.
Buzz.
Asif.
Nintendo.
No, I'm sorry. It was
Aw.
trying to be like Nintendo. Brian, do you have a guess?
No.
It's gotta be Sony.
No, this is one of my favorite E3 moments of all time. That was Ubisoft when Joel McHale was on stage, and they had the battle tag. It was laser tag.
Did that ever come out?
No, it never came out. But it was super awkward, and you could tell all throughout the presentation that Joel McHale resented it and thought it was stupid. He barely masked it. It was hilarious. I actually watched it again to get that quote. All right, number 3. There are so many virgins here that Richard Branson is doing the event.
Buzz.
Awesome.
That's gotta be Xbox.
No, I'm sorry. That's not Xbox.
That
Ryan,
sounds
do you have a guess?
that kind of sounds like this stuff that Ubisoft would do, but I don't know.
No, not Ubisoft either. That was when Activision let their press conference get hosted by Jamie Kennedy, and it went disastrously bad.
Yes, I remember that now.
Yeah,
that was bad.
that's right.
Yeah. So
Like Jamie Kennedy is the guy you call when Dax Shepard's busy.
so many bad memories. Like if you thought that like Joel McHale was like acting kind of resentful during those, during his hosting stint with Jeff Keighley, like go back and watch Jamie Kennedy. It's not even a contest. All right, number 4. This is a very short one. Bam! There it is.
I don't know.
Buzz.
Awesome.
Sony.
No,
God.
that's not Sony.
I'm enjoying my strategy of winning by not doing anything.
By 1 point, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
You got
like
the commanding.
I just keep throwing
1 point
interceptions.
lead.
Yeah.
All I do is throw an interception every play.
Do you have a
Yep.
guess?
It sounds a lot like, I don't know, like some kind of Microsoft thing where they're like dropping something like a Project Spark thing. I
It
don't
is
know.
Microsoft. It wasn't Project Spark.
Oh.
That was when I think, how did you say his name? Kudo? When he was showing off the avatar thing with the Kinect functionality, and he asked, "Have you ever wondered what the bottom of an avatar's shoe looks like?" Which no one said yes to. Who would ever wonder that?
Hey.
But then he lifted his leg to show the bottom of his shoe, and the avatar did it too, and he said, "Bam, there it is."
Hey,
Okay, I mean, that's something.
I care about feet in video games.
Austin's a really big foot fetishes, but only in the video game context.
No, I'm just saying, when I look down in virtual reality and I don't have feet, it pisses me off.
It is weird, yeah. Although you should really have like a body, just in general.
Yeah,
all right.
that
Anyway, this one is just like insulting. Now you can move your fat body freely. Now you can move your fat body freely.
I don't know.
That's the clue. I'm not insulting you guys.
Buzz.
Asif?
Nintendo wouldn't say that. It's
No.
gotta be it's Microsoft.
No, it's not Microsoft either. I'm sorry.
Wait, is it Ubisoft?
No.
I was gonna say EA.
Guessing publishers.
I'm gonna say EA.
No, it was Konami. Konami in 2010.
Yeah.
That was actually one that I was trying to understand the context of, and I was like, I don't even understand what this is supposed to be about.
Like, how do we market to fat American?
I know, we call them fat. We
call
show
them
that we
fat.
understand them. Yeah.
That's like Samsung.
Yeah, so some very tone deaf moments, and I'm sure there will be more
Good God.
here in a couple weeks.
That's the real joy of E3 is just the terrible, terrible attempts to be hip.
Yeah,
I can't wait for me to have our PR moment at the booth, Steve, where I announce I have a big announcement at E3 this year. I'm gonna tease right now.
Wow,
exciting!
Yep, huge, groundbreaking,
huge,
huge. So yeah, we need to get our video guys on like a awkward moment supercut or something like that.
Yeah,
because there's always like at least a dozen every E3.
That's true.
Didn't they do an E3 where like maybe it was a different thing where like the Windows machine blue screened or something like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was looking up like awkward moments for this, and one of the ones that I considered putting in, but I wasn't sure what the exact quote was when they brought out like Paul and Ringo for the Beatles rock band.
Yeah.
And they just seemed like utterly baffled by this dumb video game version of their music.
I think at EA last year they had Joe Montana there. It was equally awkward.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like every year EA rolls out some football person for their Madden.
Stop bringing celebrities to E3.
It's always the worst because they're always it's the exact same. I feel like they just the same script. They're like, great catch, Brian. Thanks. And then like they kind of trash talk a little bit and
the worst.
The same
script. It's not about not bringing celebrities to E3 because I met Gary Coleman at E3 once and that was cool.
Sure.
And I also met Obama Girl. She's not really a celebrity. Remember Obama Girl?
I do remember Obama Girl, yeah.
I met Obama Girl, and I was talking to her, and she's like, yeah, I'm working with, with the Obama Girl stuff. I'm like, oh, how's she doing? She's like, I'm Obama Girl. I'm like, oh. So,
wow.
Yeah, that was awkward. But
that's funny.
Anyway, yeah,
was Gary Coleman there as a video game fan, or was he there for Postal?
He was a journalist. He was working with a website.
What?
I know. This is how long I've been going to E3 for, guys.
Holy
cow. It was back when Kensha Hall was a thing. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have signs up. I see it every year. Like I've never actually been there when Kensha Hall is a thing, but I see like
it was the weirdest
for the hallway.
Kensha Hall was this weird accessory zone with just the most awkward cosplay. That's what Kensha will always be.
And now the awkward cosplay is mingling inside the E3.
Yeah, now awkward cosplay is just kind of everywhere. But yeah, I mean, and Porcosaurus mentioned something about booth ladies, and
the quote booth babes. We can use that phrase because we're using it derisively.
I'm going to say this one time. If you guys want awkward cosplay at the Shack News booth, call me up. Let me know.
Yeah, fly Brian in.
Fly me in. I will wear whatever costume.
Miko.
I might take him up on this.
I would look really good in a Hatsune Miku costume.
Yeah, we've got exhibitor badges. You can come in. Anyway. Where was I going with this?
It doesn't matter. We should probably just wrap it up.
This went so off the rails. Oh, booth babes. I was going to say like they set that rule. Just like a real quick tangent. They set that rule. A lot of companies still have like ladies, not scantily clad, but like just ladies wearing like nice and like it's obvious that they do not know video games. Like all of the Nintendo girls are just like it's tethered to them. They have a 3DS tethered to their hip, and they're like, their job is to walk up to you while you're waiting in line and be like, hey, you want to play this 3DS game? And you're like, yeah, okay. And then if you ask any questions, they're like, let me check on that. So yeah, that rule is not that strictly enforced. It's still weird and awkward. It always will be until the game.
I mean, the games industry, it's still predominantly male, and it's a problem. It's something that games media companies are trying to address. It's something that games companies are trying to address. It's something the world's trying to address. So I don't know if you saw last night. There was a trend on Twitter saying, you can beat me slightly, and it was about Pakistan has a legislation passing that men can beat their wives. So I'm like, in a world where there's other countries that are passing legislation where it's okay to beat your wives, I'm like, yes, booth babes and all this stuff is misogynistic and terrible, but at least we're not passing laws where it's okay to beat women. It's
a sliding scale of awful. Like
it's a low bar to clear, though. Let's be honest, it's a low bar to clear.
Right? It's like we are the least terrible house in a horrible neighborhood, and And it's like
Yeah.
I do my best at our company to try to be as open to religions, genders, gender identities, sexuality, whatever. You know, it's not about that. It's it's like I said, it's about gaming. So just
If I didn't title these episodes in advance, I would call this one "The Least Terrible House in a, in a Terrible Neighborhood."
like the worst neighborhood.
Yeah.
But
There's no reason not to call it that, though. Just go with it.
yeah.
You've got the editor power. You can do it.
I do. I could. It has nothing to do with what the actual topic is. But all right. Anyway, we should
Let's
move
wrap
on.
this up.
I've already plugged my Kirby review, which is coming sometime in the near future. By the time you hear this, Asif, do you have anything to plug?
I don't know. E3. I mean,
Shack Facts,
Shack
E3,
News,
Mercury.
Yeah, Mercury, Shack News. I think we're gonna have T-shirts.
We do actually have. Oh, I'm excited for the T-shirts. I need a new T-shirt with a new logo.
I'm so excited for T-shirts. It's gonna be cool. I'm really excited for E3. We're working on getting. I know Steve, Andrew, Joe. Everyone's been busting their butt trying to get some awesome guests.
Yeah.
We're
We
gonna
got
have
some really cool things planned. So
yeah. We killed it last year. We killed it last year with our E3 coverage. Being on location, we're just gonna do better, and I'm excited for that.
yeah, it's gonna be fun times. It's gonna be fun, exhausting times. So keep an eye out. We'll be back next week with another E3 show. I've actually planned out the topic for that one. Next week is going to be our Crazy Predictions edition.
Exciting.
Yeah, super fun. So until then, I am Steve Watts.
I am Brian Carr.
And for Asif Khan, we will see you on Chatty.